Please be seated. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, as the then Deputy Prime Minister, I had the duty to chair an important committee on electoral reform. The committee had very wide-ranging powers. Looked at Rodrigues, local government, female representation, and so on and so forth, and of course this issue of political financing. Now, the committee was set up in December, mid-December 2018. Despite the end of the year, etc., we completed our first report, which was, as I seem to remember, which was on political financing by the end of March, and it was then approved by Cabinet. I think it was on the 1st of April 2016, so not even 4 months after. I regret the comments of the Prime Minister saying that the report was scanty, etc. I don't want to get into details, but suffice to say that although the Prime Minister was not in government at the time, the committee comprised, apart from the Prime Minister, all the senior members of government. 2 QCs, Honourable Corinne Davalou, Honourable Gayan, and then Honourable Lila David-Dukan, the now Prime Minister, the Vice Prime Minister, Fazila Doriaou, etc., etc. So really it was a big and important committee, and consensus was reached. The report was approved. The report was sent to Cabinet. Cabinet did not find it scanty. Cabinet approved it immediately, and it was sent to the State Law Office in April 2016. I left government in December 2016. Never at any time, despite recurring reminders, did the then Attorney General tell me that the State Law Office needed any clarification of anything. So it went on like this. It stayed at the State Law Office till I left government in 2016. So it's not the time now for recriminations, this and the other. We were all in the committee. We were all happy with the report. It was approved by Cabinet, and then full stop. And obviously, I can understand why the Prime Minister is saying this, because it has taken 3.5 years to come before this House and to come today for consideration by the House. 3.5 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now, that is 39 months. 39 months to produce a bill of some pages, 20 pages, which I must say reflects the spirit of what the then committee wanted. Accountability, transparency. It reflects that spirit. There is no doubt about that. It goes on the same line. We may disagree about this and that and the other, and we will disagree on a number of points, but I must say that the line that was taken by that committee is behind the spirit of the legislation that we are looking at this afternoon. Why it took 39 months? Perhaps we can get a better explanation than the scanty explanation that the Prime Minister has given, which really doesn't hold water. And to come to seek consensus in the House and start by criticizing the opposition. Okay, let's see how it goes. Madam Speaker, so, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's the first time I have you in the chair. Mr. Deputy Speaker, and it's Mr. Deputy Speaker, what are the main changes to the proposed and present bill? Firstly, state financing has disappeared. I think probably now that it will be too late to explain to the population the importance of state financing. Nous avons raté notre chance. On a raté le coche. Because la démocratie, Monsieur le Vice-Président, a un coût. It is expensive democracy, and we'll see why. In this own legislation, government admits that democracy is expensive. It is not a free good. It's not free. It is the best thing that we have in Mauritius, democracy, and it has a cost. And the majority of democracies, I think it's nearly 70%. When we looked at it, and we had in the committee, nearly 70% of democracies accept that state financing is a good thing, it's a necessary thing to ensure that corruption is limited, to ensure that the democracy works, and to ensure that we have, as far as possible, fair and free elections. This is the great majority of democracies accept this. Because, Madam Speaker, let us just look at this, and the population will be shocked by it. Let us just look at the sort of cost that this bill actually presupposes so far as an election is concerned. If you make the calculation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you will see that for a party that fields 62 candidates, including Rodriguez, you have a limit. You cannot be authorized to spend up to 83 million rupees. That is for the general elections. 83 million rupees per party or per alliance that will take part in the election, fielding every candidate possible. For municipal elections, we are talking about another 36 million, and that will come after the general election. We know that. And then, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you'll be surprised. Village council elections. Do you know how much? Say you had one party which wanted to field candidates in every village in Mauritius. Do you know how much it would be authorized to spend? 234 million rupees. Look at the sort of sums we are talking about. Even the 36 million, which is the lowest sum, is a huge amount of money to raise. 80 million upwards for a general election, that is a huge amount of money to raise. And it's now going to be raised directly by the treasurer of the party, not by candidates individually. That will no longer be allowed. Good thing or bad thing we'll see in a moment. But each party will raise 83 million rupees. From where? From where are we going to get 83 million rupees? Legally? How is that going to happen? This is the question that the population needs to ask itself, and this is the reason why state financing, and we had in mind, if memory serves me well, a sum of 150 million rupees that the state would have put aside every 5 years. Every 5 years. We just gave 52 million rupees to CMT to export. We can afford 150 million rupees every 5 years for democracy. And this is why I regret that it is not in the bill. I accept that it is late now to explain this to the population. But it is not the fault of the opposition that the bill has come à la veille des élections générales. It is not our fault, it is not our doing, and that is to be laid strictly at the door of government. So we are talking about, Madam Speaker, per alliance, per party, fielding 83 million. So you have 3-4 parties coming up in the general election. Imagine how much money is going to be wielded, Mr. Speaker. It is quite mind-blowing in the absence of state funding. In the absence of state funding. This is the first thing, Madam Speaker. The second thing that I cannot see in the bill is this provision that there should be no political donation, whether in kind or in cash, in return for an expected favor or in return for an expected advantage, financial or political. You can see even in the UK, people getting knighted, etc., in return for having financed the party. So that was also included in the paper, in our deliberations of the committee. Why? We can't see it in any shape or form in the final bill. Perhaps the Prime Minister will come and tell us whether this is covered somewhere else or whether, in fact, it is an omission, deliberate or otherwise. Why it's not there, whereas it was there in the original report of the Committee on Electoral Reform, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Political donations should not be allowed in return for future favors, appointments, jobs, juicy and profitable contracts. That was, and ought to, in my view, be clearly set out in the political financing bill. Because that is the crux of the matter. Why would someone give you 80 million rupees to do the election? Why? Because you like the look of your face? This is why the temptation is there, and the temptation must be gotten rid of. Mr. Deputy Speaker, then there was the less important one, but nevertheless, the issue of anonymous donations. We thought that anonymous donations, the committee thought at the time that anonymous donations of less than 50,000 rupees need not be reported. It would cause embarrassment to people who, after all, have, in the scheme of things, you can see the millions that are going around are actually not very, very important. They are just, in fact, really nominal amounts given to political parties and ought to be able to remain anonymous. And the last one, the last main difference which I'm going to take, there are others, is the fact concerning the sentences, the penalties for infringement of the law. Penalties for infringement of the law. Now, all that we have at the moment are financial penalties. Okay, you have taken 10, 20, 100 million rupees in excess. You pay 1 million rupee fine, and that's it. Whereas in the original committee, the idea of having ineligibility to be elected again, if you're already elected or elected at the next election, would be a sentence, as well as imprisonment. Those two things together with financial penalty would have had a far greater impact, far greater binding impact on the law, and that would have put real teeth in the legislation, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Nevertheless, let's see the bill that is presented today. It has been done in a bit of a cavalier method, I must say. Here is the bill, look at it, and we hope that, I think Honorable Boissaison said somewhere, we should have anonymous voting because we have to agree on everything. Whereas government has not agreed with itself. The original committee was changed in a way, and now we have a change of mind. The government has changed its mind from the original committee. We are not allowed, although we are going to be affected by this bill directly, democracy is going to be affected, we're not allowed to put any input on this bill. We just have to accept it, or I don't know what else. So this is, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I regret the fact that the cavalier attitude of government, should there have been a round table, should there have been a formal committee, and I would propose at the end of my speech somewhere to move this process forward if, as I understand it, there will not be a majority to vote for this, for the change of constitution today. Now, let us think back. Why on earth did the Constitution ask for a 75% majority to change the Constitution? Why? Why was that? Had they gone crazy, fathers of our nation, to do that? Or was there a reason? The reason is that the creators of the Constitution wanted there to be consensus for changes of the Constitution. Wide-ranging support for changes of the Constitution. How do you get wide-ranging support when you just throw a bill at the House and say, vote if you want, don't vote if you don't want? There has been insufficient effort on the part of government to try and reach consensus, and we, for one, the PMSD, having myself sat on that committee, we are willing to, in a formal structure, not in a private meeting structure, in a formal structure, willing to consider changes rapidly that need to be made to this bill for it to have its 75% majority in the House. Because I think also it would be regrettable that this doesn't occur and it keeps being postponed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we need cross-party support, and cross-party support doesn't come like that. Cross-party support comes after an effort is made at understanding what are the priorities, what are the concerns, what are the suggestions of other parties. That is the definition of cross-party support. Cross-party support doesn't come like that quickly. It comes with an effort. And we can only regret there has been no effort. And this has led some people to say that government really doesn't want it to be approved. Because there has been no effort at least so far as the PMS is concerned, to call maybe a committee, a select committee, something to study and to come quickly with amendments. The original white paper that was published by government, if I can call it a white paper, some months ago, is totally different from the law that has been proposed today. Madam Speaker, so what are our problems? First problem is the Electoral Supervisory Commission. I made no bones about that. It's no secret what I think of the Electoral Supervisory Commission. In my mind, maybe I am stupid, in my mind, the Electoral Supervisory Commission should be fiercely independent, because that is the basis of our democracy in this country. This Electoral Supervisory Commission is our pride and joy. It is a jewel in the crown. The Electoral Commission is highly respected around the world, and rightly so. But what have we seen with the Electoral Supervisory Commission? What I've lived it as leader of the opposition. I've lived it. And I'm not happy with the trend. I'm not saying it was perfect in the past, no. There were issues in the past, and this is why I would say what I proposed at the time. And there were issues in the past, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now what happened? Un beau jour, sometime, I don't remember when, I received a letter. This is a consultation, by the way. The president, whoever sees consultation, are sending the leader of the opposition a letter. I presume it was before that the same. And you reply, and you don't know what happens ever again. This time, we replied. We obviously objected to Mrs. Sona Ori being appointed. Why? Because she was politically conflicted. She had even stood on a political platform wearing the orange vest, and suddenly she was being now propulsed, or whatever the word is, to the Electoral Supervisory Commission to supervise the electoral system in Mauritius. Here we have a political agent being now posted at the Electoral Supervisory Commission. Thank God there was such a outcry in the population, in the press, etc., that Mrs. Ori gave up and didn't pursue, or she was removed, whatever happened. Her candidature was removed. But then, before we had time to say, oof, now we come with another one. One, Mrs. Ragavoudou. Same Mrs. Ragavoudou, who is on the board of Air Mauritius. And God knows, I've taken care of Air Mauritius long enough to know that you don't get appointed on the board of Air Mauritius lightly. It is a jewel. It is, again, the jewel in the crown, if I can say so, of appointments, where after a few years you get free air tickets, etc. I mean, it's a good appointment. And Mrs. Ragavoudou is on there. And I won't go into her family connections. I will use some restraint. But we do not accept that Mrs. Ragavoudou is a fiercely independent person that ought to be on the Electoral Supervisory Commission. I received the letter again from the president, acting president. This time I wrote to him. I objected. I phoned. I said, can I come and see you? I think I ought to talk to you about this. I went to see him. I explained to him why the opposition is against the appointment of a politically conflicted person on the Electoral Supervisory Commission. That she's on the board of Air Mauritius or whatever. It's okay. It's not perfect, but we're not going to fight about it. But that she is appointed on the Electoral Supervisory Commission is, in a democracy, unacceptable. I explained it to him, and I told him also my view that if the problem is that there have been others who were related one way or conflicted with other political parties, I would be happy to have all of these changed and to have a new Electoral Supervisory Commission, completely independent of any political party. I wasn't going to play party politics. Right? We don't have anyone close to the PMSD ever on the Electoral Supervisory Commission. But as I said, we were willing. I spoke to the president then, said, look, if that is a problem, let's now, where the president got these two names, I mean, we can only suppose. But I told him we can actually have a new, or take out the members that political parties objected to, because they are there to supervise elections. And of course, he listened to me, and he completely ignored me. He completely ignored me, and Mrs. Ragavoudou was elected. And this same Mrs. Ragavoudou, which is on the same ESC, which is no longer independent, is going to be given additional powers tonight. Additional powers, and what will happen? In a few months' time, let's say there's another vacancy. Someone comes to the end of his term, someone has a misadventure, someone resigns. In a few months' time, there's another vacancy at the Electoral Supervisory Council. What will happen? Are we going to come again? The president going to send whoever is leader of the opposition at the time a letter, and then we're going to have this and that and the other political agent appointed there, and these are the people who will come and supervise and given additional powers? I think not, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This is why our first objection is the current method, composition, not all of them, of the ESC, and the method of appointment. Now, the Electoral Commissioner is appointed by the Judicial and Legal Service Commission. We can see that. What my suggestion, my humble suggestion, is that the Electoral Commission also, Supervisory Commission also, should be appointed, let's say, by the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, because as I mentioned, nobody has any criticism against the Electoral Commission. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there's a real problem. I hope people understand. I hope I've made myself clear that what should be fierce independent is no longer, and the trend is even worse. Is even worse. Yes, it's even worse.
Can I please? I think honorable members have been warned before that they should either switch off or put their telephone on silent mode. Please do so, in order not to interrupt the speech of the leader of the opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Speaker. So, the trend is dangerous for this country, and certainly do not count on the PMSD to give additional powers to the present Electoral Supervisory Commission. Do not count on the PMSD for that. Should there be a willingness to change, certainly we will go along with that change. Mr. Deputy Speaker, now, so again, I say government accept the consequences of having had conflicted, not independent persons on the Electoral Supervisory Commission. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there are other issues. I believe that this bill is so important that it must leave no room for supposition, no room for approximation, and everything must be absolutely clear, no subjectiveness, no ambiguity, no vague powers. And this is why I'm going to raise the issue of two sections of this bill, Section 6.1 and Section 6.3, of 6.1f and Section 6.3. Why do I do this, Mr. Deputy Speaker? We have all read in the international press issues arising in the region, mostly Africa, South America, etc., where presidents, parties are not allowed to take part in the elections. They are not allowed to register themselves as candidates for usually some subterfuge. He was not born here, this and that. Many other reasons are evoked to prevent the democratic process from working properly. Now, this is why there are sections in this bill which I think are objectionable because they are vague. They would not be objectionable if they were precise. And so I think this is not a complicated issue. Let's take Section 6.1f. You have, if you want to register as a political party, you have to give name, symbol, official address, and all that. Nobody has any issue. But then it says 6.1f, such other information or document as the Commission may determine. Why? This is vague. What can you ask you for? Your marriage certificate? They can ask you for, what can they ask you for more? There should be absolutely clear what information is required. It is not for us to vote a law that is vague. And the same thing will apply to section 6(3). If you turn the page. The Commission may, after considering all the particulars, register the political party. May, Mr. Deputy Speaker, not shall. May. I object to this may. I think, firstly, the application must be clear-cut what you must submit in the law itself. And once you have done that, to the satisfaction of the Commission shall, not may. I think that is not, that is a vagueness and subjectiveness and ambiguity which is not acceptable. As I mentioned, we don't know what will the ESC be made up of in the years to come. So that is important, that there should not be any temptation on the ESC to put undue pressure or even to debar political parties from registration, in which case, for one thing, they will not be able to accept funds, and then I presume also not be able to register themselves for the election and participate in the election. No vague powers, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Same also for section 9(1) of the bill, which says that you will not take money from this, that, and the other, which we all agree with. You not take money from CSR, etc., and such other bodies as may be prescribed. You can imagine someone being a bit nasty, a bit mischievous, and starting to prescribe other bodies that have not been thought of and that are suddenly seeing as financing some political party. So I think, again, this may not be, Madam Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, issues which are as wide-ranging as the Electoral Supervisory Commission. Nevertheless, in practice, this can cause a lot of problems for parties, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I'll go also to section 25 of the bill, where it is this time the president that may make such regulations as he thinks fit for the purposes of this act, as he thinks fit. If you look at the Declaration of Peoples, the Representative People's Act, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you look at section 85, there the president may also issue regulations, but it is clear what type of regulations. There are 7 instances of regulations that he can issue, he can make, like prescribing the forms to be used, prescribing the fees, the period for registration, etc. So we cannot give, again, the same president or another one a blank check to make any regulation that he might think fit for the purpose of this bill, Mr. Deputy Speaker. What about the financial aspects? The financial aspects, we talked about anonymous donations. We think it should be included, small amount up to 50,000 rupees, but it hasn't been. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what about membership fee? Isn't that a loophole? You are allowed to give membership fees are not accounted for as donations. But I can have a simple member's fee. I can have a silver member. I can have a gold member. I can have a platinum member. Still a membership fee. A platinum member can be 5 million rupees. It can be 15 million rupees. A life member, who knows? So it's not appropriate. It is too big a loophole to accept. You cannot have the simple word membership fee. It is open to manipulation because you can have all types of members. And these can go to any amount without it being counted as a donation. Another one which I think is astounding, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the question of airtime. Now, if donations in kind are strictly controlled. Even a banner, you know, that you have on the, you would put, you know, outside the market or something, that is controlled. You have to account for the banner. You have to account for billboard. You have to account for everything. But you do not have to account for free airtime. No, free airtime, you have to account for the banner, you know, vote this, vote that, but not free airtime. If you're donated banners, I mean, you have to account for it. If you're given free airtime all day long, your radio will give you airtime, that is not a donation. And when we know that we have 2 new radio stations, plus the embassy, but the embassy is controlled during the campaign, I think. These 2 radio stations, they are coming up, they've just been licensed, lucky people, there's a case in court and all that, lucky guys, we all know their political affiliation, and this is glaring inclusion in the law that free airtime is not going to be counted as a donation. That is not acceptable, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now, there's the report, I understand, that the Electoral Supervisory Commission will be making to Parliament. That's all it says. The ESC will make a report to Parliament. I think, again, to avoid ambiguity, we need to know what is going to be in the report. What issues, what are the subject matters that the ESC would include in its report to Parliament, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Now, there's one thing I need to raise. I don't know whether it's a drafting error, but Section 9 of the bill, of this bill, says that it is only the treasurer who is allowed to collect funds for the party. I've got no issue with that particular bit of the law. But if you look at Section 53B of the Representation of People's Act, there it says that donations are only to be paid to candidate or to his electoral agent. So I'd be grateful if maybe there has been an omission, maybe I've misunderstood, but it's apparent to me that there is a contradiction in the law as far as that is concerned. Madam Speaker, as far as disclosure is concerned by companies in their financial statements, that is Section 11C of the bill, now that section does say clearly that the amount of donations made to a registered political party. It is in the singular. Now, the Prime Minister said, in fact, that the donations will be amalgamated completely and published in the financial statements as one figure, donations to political parties. So I wonder whether the way that it has been drafted, that is, donations made to a political party, whether it doesn't require, as I can read the law here, individually, Deputy Prime Minister says, no, fair enough, individually require a separate disclosure. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Section 14.2 requires report of donations received by party alliance to be signed by the treasurer of each political party. How can that be? How is one political party going to know how much the other political party has received? How? This is completely unworkable. Each political party has its own structure, has its own method of managing its accounts, its funds, etc. And these guys meet for the purpose of an election. And it's not, no access is provided, either political party, into the funds of the other political party. So requiring a treasurer of one political party to certify the accounts of the other political party, happens to be an alliance, or political parties, I think is unworkable and ought to be removed from the legislation. What should be done is that each political party must be responsible to make its own report, whether it is in alliance or not. That will make sure that it is at least has a chance of being accurate. Because otherwise, there is no way we can I assume that the report provided is going to be in any way accurate, and I wouldn't like to be the treasurer who actually signs the report of another political party sent to the Electoral Supervisory Commission. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we mentioned, therefore, that yes, on the issue of ambiguity, I think we raised that issue, no? 6F. Such other information as there's also section 6F, which I think I mentioned, but I'm being given this paper. I think I mentioned it. Mr. Deputy Speaker, so as I mentioned, I was in the chair of the committee. The essence, the idea, the philosophy is still here. We have issues regarding, they're not that major issues, if you think about it. They are not sort of mind-blowing issues. We are asking for a proper supervisory body that is fiercely independent, and then there are other housekeeping issues that I thought of. My colleagues on this side of the House will raise other issues which I'm sure are as important. So what am I asking for from now on? We are asked to vote this bill, I think, at 5 a.m. in the morning. Is that serious? Is that how government wants to proceed with amendment to the Constitution? I think not, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The population will not accept that we treat our Constitution in this way. What I'm saying, we have some points here which are genuine points. Others will have other points. Similarly, as government took 3.5 years to come to this House, we should be given a chance in a select committee. We can put a timeline to the select committee. We can give it a date. We can appoint it immediately. This is my own suggestion. And we could invite all the political parties in the House, and maybe, why not, if one or two want to depone from outside, I have no problem with that, and come up, say 2 weeks' time, with amendments to this law, which will honor our country, which will honor our democracy, and which will ensure, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we do away with covert, under-the-table political financing, and we have put more transparency and accountability in something that is, up to the present, completely unaccountable and completely opaque. That is my contribution, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to the debate. Thank you.